Welcome to What the Heck's your source for Warhammer Underworlds and under 30 cards that you probably shouldn't include in your deck, but you still do. I'm your co-host, Davey, and with me, as always, the co-host that I should include on this podcast, Phil. How are you doing, Phil?
Hey, I am doing a lot better. I'm feeling human again.
All right.
Yeah.
And that's because of a stint with lycanthropy? You were...
Well, I mean, there's that, but then also I had the Rona.
Oh, no.
It got me.
Yeah.
And so I've been stuck in the house for the past almost 2 weeks. Haven't left the house, but back to normal, no more symptoms. So hopefully back to playing games and stuff again.
That would be excellent. The crew misses you. They've been asking between work and illness. You've been MIA for most of this league, but
I have not actually gotten out to roll any dice in weeks. And the funny thing is that with work being as crazy as it was, I actually pulled like an 11-hour day the day that I found out I had COVID. I was like,
it's not helping anything.
Got to get this project done. And I was like feeling awful by the end of the day. And it's like, I better go home and test. And of course, positive. So it's like, oh, of course. I was spending like 11 hours at work and then, was COVID positive the entire day. That's probably good.
Oof. And then even then, I think I was hitting you up and you were like still working from home with COVID. The curse of remote work. So.
Yep. Yeah, can't get away from it.
Well, it hit my household too. My wife's upstairs sleeping. She's got it. So double corona. It's starting to look like a triple corona. No, not. No. I feel fine. I hope not.
Okay. Yeah, let's not jinx that.
Yeah. Bad jokes. Anyway, we have an episode for folks today. We are covering deep cuts, overlooked gems, needles in the haystack, whatever you want to call it. Cards that listeners think are cool, but think that maybe don't get as much attention as they should. That's something I've been wanting to do for a little while. The idea popped in my head, and we've got a lot of options to cover.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it a little bit more in a second. We've got some community shout outs. I actually have like the most community shout outs I've ever like compiled. We're not going to hit them all. I'm going to save some for the next episode because for context, we are recording on a rare possible, we'll see how this goes, but a rare possible same day release. Usually it takes me several days to go through the edits. Believe it or not, this does get edited. It may not sound like it, but I do try to clean up the audio and get rid of the... If you think you hear me saying a lot, man, you should hear the unedited versions because it is gross. But we're gonna try and stay on track here. I'm just gonna hit the time sensitive ones. So right now there is the Vassal Brawl going on. That is an event that is the first time they've run it. It had four different qualifiers. They were kind of open to sign up. And they take the top two from each of those qualifiers, and now it's like an invitational. So the top two from each of those four are playing in an 8-person tournament. The first round is going on right now. I think the first match, Diablerist advanced past. I want to say Pastor, but I may be wrong. I think Gitz might have advanced in the very first match. There's a lot of death in there. Anyway, the next game is airing. If you're hearing this, either... It's airing on Sunday the 12th, and Shuby plus various other individuals that he recruits will be trying to provide during the game commentary, which is really fun. I've only gotten to see that once or twice. That sort of live commentary on a game that makes it very interesting, a very unique thing. So if you got a chance, check that out. Other events, we have an event coming up on August 7th. We got a few more details to hammer out, but it's going to be at Noble Night Games. It's a Sunday, again, August 7th. It's going to be championship best of 3, and we are looking forward to doing that. And come on out if you're anywhere in the area. We'd love to see you. Somebody's got to knock Jazz down a peg or two. She's just getting too big for her boots. Just a pile of ego, that Jazz. So.
Oh, yeah, you know her. Insufferable.
And that's what I'm going to keep it to. There's some great stuff going on out there, but we'll circle back around on next step because we got a lot Phil, I think we already know what the heck is going on with you.
Yeah,
You done
well,
been sick.
done been sick. Have not done any stuff. I right before I got sick, I did sort of. We played a game where I played my Hrothgorn that
Oh yeah.
went fairly well, although I did end up losing the game, and I've made a few edits to that sort of here and there. So excited to try that again. Probably going to be what I take out. I also have my Starblood Stalkers with a whole bunch of flip tech that I think are quite good. Although the only times I've gotten to play them, it was like really early in our before we started this most recent league, and then I played you in one game, and dice were just a problem in that game.
Yeah.
If you make 5 attacks and you get 5 crit kills in those 5 attacks, do you think you're going to win a game?
You built a great deck. Yeah. Well, I think both those games you mentioned, I've been playing various iterations of the Grimwatch.
Yeah.
And enjoying that. I tried a couple different builds, and hopefully I'll have some more information coming out about that. But been enjoying them, and got some useful stuff from some folks online. I like I've shouted out before. The Discords are great for spitballing, kicking around some list ideas. So
Absolutely.
I will credit contributors when I get a chance to talk to them a little bit more about that. But speaking of contributors, here's actually the biggest community shout out I want to do is to our listeners. What a response!
Yeah.
I'm glad it finally tapered off a little bit, because I put out a call on several different channels. Hey, we're doing this. Let's see what we can see what you have for your deep cuts. And at one point, I was starting to think, I'm like, we may have to cut some of these out. I don't know if we're going to have to talk about all these. So, thank you very much if you sent something in. It's really awesome to see that kind of response, and we really appreciate it a lot. That kind of engagement is really why we do this more than anything. It's certainly not for the fortune and fame. So, we're going to jump into it. Phil, you got anything else before we start talking about some overlooked treasures?
We got a lot of cards. Let's dive right in.
First one I want to cover is from Lethenham. He actually gets credit for being the first reply when I first put something out. First put out the idea. He put something out. So for a while, he was our only entry. And this one I'm going to have you talk mostly about. His first candidate was Invisible Hunter from Starblood Stalkers. He described it as an interesting card, poorly executed. Phil, tell us about what that card is, and then give us some thoughts.
So this is a ploy for the Starblood Stalkers. It doesn't have like a restricted text, but it basically should, because the card only works with Autopodal. So the way it works is you play this and you remove Autopodal from the game. He is not considered out of action, and then this card persists until the end of the round. And when the card no longer persists, you then place him back in any empty hex not adjacent to an enemy fighter on the board. And you can't play it in round 3. So like you can't just pop him off the board to stop him from getting killed. So there's a couple things that make this card hard to play. That last line obviously means that this card is dead if you don't draw it before round 3, which is always tough. And then the fact that it persists until the end of the round means that he doesn't come back until after you've scored your objectives, which is also really rough. However, it's cool in that you do have this option to just teleport him kind of anywhere on the board or get him out of a bad spot.
Sure.
I think the idea is really great. And then, like Lethenham said, the execution makes it just super hard to play with, because there's so many things you have to keep in mind that are all downsides.
Yeah.
So it's a very niche card. When I've played pure Rivals Starblood Stalkers, I actually did use this card a couple times. Not to any sort of really great effect, but usually what it allowed me to do is that at the end of round 1 or 2, I could reposition Autopodal onto a deep objective in enemy territory and then have the board sort of stretched on 2 sides. So it has some use, but I think really it's mostly just a flavor card.
Yeah.
I think if you like that kind of mechanic, it's probably something that's worth experimenting with. But I think
Hmm.
overall, you find that it's tough. The one other thing that I didn't mention is that the trigger is until it doesn't persist. So normally that is until the end of round. But if you wanted to, and I don't know why you would, but if you wanted to play some of the cards that can cancel persisting gambits, which might be useful for stopping some of your opponent's stuff too, you can actually end this early, and then he pops back in whenever you end the card.
Yeah, I will say, if there was ever a time, it feels like we are entering that era where there is enough persisting gambits that are powerful and people are using between
Yeah.
waypoints and stuff like that. That maybe, but
It's
maybe,
pretty,
but
pretty
probably not. So,
tough.
yeah, I mean, this is kind of the perfect card for this sort of topic that I was thinking of when I threw out the possibility of this.
Yeah.
While we're talking about Lethenham's choices, he later threw a couple more in. We've got Praescent. And this is an upgrade, and it is. I yelled at him because this is the one that I wanted to talk about for myself. So, but it turns a fighter into a quarry, and then after an enemy fighter's activation, if that fighter has 2 hexes from this fighter, or if that fighter has 3 or more hunger counters, push that fighter 1 hex towards this fighter. So this is a very also niche card. It what is crazy is it is it's a push, right? So
Yeah.
it's a repeatable push, depending. So getting more than one push out of a power card is powerful right there. It's especially great for range 1 fighters because the range 1 fighters, their problem is often that it's very hard for them to swing their weapon more than once in a given round. Usually it's a charge and now I'm done. And in this way, depending, you basically have a bubble that says, hey, if you want to go walk next to me, you can do that thing where there's a triangle of objectives and you stand right in the center of them. And so if anyone wants to stand on any of those feature tokens, you can pull them in towards you. The other thing it's great for is if somebody comes, hits you, either damages you or ties the attack and drives you back, you can use Praescent to pull them back towards you. And it is that very valuable after an activation, after an enemy activation reaction window. So it has the ability to block quite a few offensive reactions, which is valuable in and of its own right. So I think many decks don't have room for it. I think there's a few that do have built some steel hearts that like this. And I really like it in concept. I haven't got to use it very often.
Yeah.
So.
I have to imagine that it's also better on larger fighters that are able to sort of withstand a few hits.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you definitely don't just throw this in any warband. You got to have a few things sort of designed for it, but it's pretty good.
Yeah.
So definitely one I've always looked at and been like, I bet there's something you can do with this, but never actually tried it.
Yeah. Also from Lethenham, and this will lead us into some contributions from Jason Murray of the Path to Glory podcast and Battle Mallet podcast. They got on a little mini conversation of cards that are good as anti-exiled dead cards. So depending, and that's another niche that you can talk about, sort of those the hidden gems that become good specifically because of a warband that may or may not be warping the meta, and remains to be seen whether they are. For this, Lethenham came up with Silent Bracers was one, and this is definitely one of those cards that when I saw, I was like, when I saw its name thrown out, I was like, well, I'm gonna have to go look that up because I don't remember. That's not one of the silent things that I see very often. So, and this one, you want to run this one down for us?
Yeah. So like all the silent relics, this one does make you a quarry. And then it says that if you're a quarry, which I guess there are a few cards that say this fighter can never be a quarry. But so it says if this fighter is a quarry, this fighter can move through blocked and occupied hexes. So that is useful if you are dealing with the exiled dead. Usually their strategy is to make a big wall of zombies and keep things protected, but you effectively have super flying with these bracers on, so then you can move right through the zombies. And then the other part of this is much more niche and probably will not be coming up very often. But if this fighter's move action begins in no one's territory, this fighter has +2 move for the duration of that action.
Mm.
It's a pretty nice little speed boost. I'm sure that there are warbands with lots of pushes that you could like start a fighter near front lines, push them into end up in no one's territory before you upgrade them, put the upgrade on, and then they can like shoot off anywhere
Yeah.
on the board, basically.
Yeah. Once you're no man's land, then an extra 2 move probably gets you most of the board.
Yeah. And if you do have 2 or more silent relics, this also does just give you a base just +1 move all the time. So
Sure.
if you're running other silent relics, this can be just a little speed boost as well.
Yeah.
It's a solid card. Speed boosts are always interesting because +1 move by itself is usually not enough. +1 move in flying is probably enough to be useful. That if you think that that's a strategy that you need, that this could just have merit on its own. And then if you want to like lean into the quarry thing, I can see finding a home for this card in those kinds of decks where you're like, if I'm a quarry, I'll score stuff.
Sure.
Which is pretty solid. I think just in general, while this one is probably more niche than the rest, I really like the design of most of the silent relics, and I will be sad to see them go.
Yeah. Hopefully I guess they're currently the set is illusions, I guess is what the phantom whatever's is the latest. But yeah. Another card, and this was sort of jointly submitted by I think Jason Murray and Lethenmar, as part of their conversation, was a Perfect Stance, and it actually took me a half second to figure out why this card. And I've used this card. It was in Miari's for quite a while I was getting ready for that event. This is an order only card, and this fighter cannot be given stagger tokens, which right there is kind of your anti exiled dead tech. So they really like capitalizing on a staggered fighter. I guess on the side, it also helps against the claw pack and those rude boys when they start staggering you. And it also has the effect: this fighter is a target of range 1 or range 2 attack action. This fighter is considered to have 1 additional supporting fighter. So a little extra. That part is a modest but good and the right sort of thing. So
yeah, those kinds of small defensive boosts are always best if you have multiple dice on your defense rolls. And in this case, they have what's his name? Steelheart. And so Inspired, they have 2 blocks. So 2 block with additional supporting fighters, pretty nice. And yeah, you can never get rid of that support. And since it's an additional support, then if they have 1, they'll count as 2, and that's pretty saucy.
Yeah. One thing I've overlooked a few times when I think 1 or 2 people have played against using this is that if you happen to have, what's the surge for attacking somebody with 1 more supporting fighter than you?
The reckless
swing. You got it. If you have reckless swing, you can score that with a 1-on-1 attack here. So
yeah.
But solid. Jason Murray's other suggestion for this was Painful Brilliance. Painful Brilliance being a card from Dire Chasm, -1 dice from range 3+ attack actions that target this fighter to a minimum of 1, and -1 dice from attack actions that target this fighter instead to a minimum of 1 if you have the primacy token.
Yeah. It's pretty rude if you're playing the orcs. Savage orcs, because they're probably having primacy most of the time. So just always -1 dice.
Yeah, and anyone against Exiled Dead is going to pick it up pretty quickly.
If they're playing primacy, which I guess I don't even know if people are still frequently packing it. I'm sure it helps against Exiled Dead a lot. So
I have not seen it very much. Just a few. I think there's a few warbands that like to take it, but even there's enough restrictions going on that it can be pretty tough to find the room
Yeah.
for it. Like
Yeah.
Crushes still really like it, but they've got a lot of competition for their restricted slots at this point.
Oh yeah, sure do.
But yeah, so and I think the other side of this that I didn't notice until now is even the -1 dice from range 3+. If we're treating this as a anti-exile dead, well, that's not bad because you can throw uh, Dyntalos's attack, which can be pivotal for setting up
Yeah,
other
making it
things.
1 dice.
Yeah. So, and I should say that Jason Murray probably was thinking about this because they've been doing a lot talk about Exile Dead. One of the most recent Battle Mallet podcasts was specifically about Exile Dead, and that's a good listen, which you should go check out. Godsworn Gamer, he threw out Reckless Rush, also one that I knew once I looked at, but took me a while to even remember what it was. What is
Yeah.
Reckless Rush, Phil?
Yeah, this is a gambit. So you double the move characteristic of the first friendly fighter to make a move action in the next activation step until the action has been resolved. I don't. That's sort of a new wording there. I think that kind of goes without saying, but they added the 6 extra words anyway. And then you deal 1 damage to the fighter and stagger them.
Well, and what's interesting when reading this card, I think they could have put the word "then deal 1 damage to,"
They
and
could
then
have.
right?
It's
They just
just
say,
2 separate sentences. Yeah.
It's a little unclear. Like I think the way it's written, you would assume that that happens after everything else, but I think they could have cleaned that up a little bit. Anyway,
Yeah.
but that's Godsworn didn't throw this out to us for us to talk about the semantics of this card. What do you think makes this a hidden gem, Phil?
Well, there are definitely some warbands where being able to move really fast is a really big deal. And I suppose there's also just the surprise factor of being like, hey, by the way, my fighter who wants to hit you really hard suddenly is like, move 6 or move 8, and can really catch you off guard. I mean, I can't even imagine like, hey, Malog, you're now move 6. That's scary.
Oof.
But yeah, so I don't know. Every time there's been a double move thing that's not restricted to specifically the like only move actions, like being able to charge double speed is very strong. So I can definitely see this coming up in a few different warbands as being useful. You can really catch people out if they don't realize that you're playing this. I don't know that if like, and I guess there's the other thing of like high speed is something that even if you know that your opponent can do it, there's not really anything you can do about it to like offset it. Because once you get to speed 6 or higher, there's no way to play around that. Like that's like the whole board. So you can't like just hide people away and be like, oh yeah, I'm too far away, they can't get me. It's like, no, they're probably coming to get you if they want you. So I can see this being especially useful in warbands that want to be able to get to specific fighters. In fact, rats maybe like this okay, although the 1 damage on them is probably pretty brutal. But going to speed 10 and being able to just go get a boss when they think they can get that kill is probably a worthwhile risk.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And then some of these warbands that have pretty low wound fighters, some of them you're like, yeah, it's fine. I'm in 1-shot range anyway. The 1 damage is no big deal.
Yeah,
if you hold it towards the end of the round too, you may not even have to pay the price on the stagger.
Yeah. And like, I guess this doesn't come, I think this is maybe just with reverse, but like if you don't really care about your fighters dying, then yeah, the 1 extra damage doesn't matter either. So
maybe you want them to die.
Yeah, maybe you need them to die to win the game.
Right, exactly. Maybe you do this and you go back to that classic. I used to do it with Lethal Ward, where your own fighter dies and you use that to trigger Fueled by a Slaughter. So bomb Targor in, take a swipe somewhere. Maybe he's got a weapon or something like that, and then he dies. And you make another attack and kind of close the thing out.
Yeah,
I think you're well on your way to Khorne's Chosen with that.
So. Yeah, might as well.
Um, yeah, so that's a good. That's another great one for this category. We got some feedback on Twitter here. Nick Baton from Warhammer Community threw out making a statement, and his comment was, "In the current season, it's so easy to get those 3 glory." And this is the kind of card that fits this category because it's why when the mechanics change on any given season, you open up the cards and you look through everything again because all right, like what. And I remember as the season was starting, as it was dawning on people, like this kind of card was like, oh man,
It's
like
so strong.
yeah. So I've definitely been running with this. It's not an auto score. I really like how it fits in.
Yep.
Some decks like it a lot more than others, but man, I it's a cool one.
Yeah.
And similar to that, Northwest Underworlds throughout I love me some Claim the City and Infestation, and those are
Yeah.
basically the same card for different factions. Claim the City / RIP Claim the City podcast, first and greatest of us, uh, and then Infestation is for the gits. But these are the 5 glory if you hold every objective, which used to be insane, and now is a little less insane.
Yeah. I feel like it's a little bit of a slap in the face that Sepulchral Guard got Claim the City restricted. Um,
Mm.
it's like it's not that. It's yes, it's being used in every Sepulchral Guard deck, but like they need it, man.
Well,
But they're
they
doing
are
pretty
one
good
of
now.
they're one of the 8 that's competing in the Vassal Brawl finals there.
Yeah.
Um, Here's what I love about both these though, is that although they are now both restricted, anytime you're playing against a Gits deck, best of 1 especially, but best of 3 as well, Gits or Guard, you're like, okay, like did they spend a restricted slot on this card? I have to assume they did, and so.
Oh yeah.
Uh, this is one of those like hidden gems that those warbands love, even if they're not taking it, because they're putting pressure on the opponent just by the possibility that they can have it. Because
Yeah.
that is a big score that Josh scored against me, hurt real
Nice.
bad. So
With Gits or with Sepulchral Guard?
Sepulchral Guard.
Yeah, buddy.
This is the disaster when I tried to play Far Striders into him. He got that early. I was like, I think I can come back, and then he got Chitin Scimitar and just like
Uh-oh.
slowly whittled away each of my guys. Like, stupid Cleave. So
Yeah. No, it's good. And like you say, it makes you think you pretty much have to consider standing on an objective. Like you must be on an objective in those matchups because you can't afford to just give up 5 glory.
mhm.
Like how do you come back from that?
Right, exactly. Uh, it is definitely panic time if they manage to land that one. So um, another one I actually think I forgot to put it in the list you're looking at here is Rising Water, and that also
Mm,
from Northwest Underworlds on Twitter. This is one that's -2 from each fighter's move characteristic to a minimum of 0 in the next activation step. And they say a universal that they've really enjoyed is Rising Water. Recently, after using Maze Breachers a couple of times, it's really handy to shut down a crucial charge or a territory objective grab in Activation 4. And that's true. -2 is kind of a big chop.
yeah.
You hate to see it if you're Dwarden, if you're running Chosen Axes. Well, I
Speed
guess I
one.
just won't move. Yeah. Um, so, or even throwing that down when you think that the Exiled Dead are about to take a move, that can really
Yeah.
limit what mobility they have. So, for me, that it's the definition of a of this hidden gem card. Ends up being like that 11th, 12th card, but certainly in Rivals Plus,
Oh
another
yeah.
look at it is worthwhile.
And interestingly, it is I believe, exactly the same card as a faction card for the Magor's Fiends.
Oh yeah,
They
what?
they had a gambit that is just until the end of the next activation, enemy fighters have -2 move.
Theirs is something crazy like Rivers of Blood or Blood Rises or Blood
Yeah,
Slick or
there
Bloody Blood
something
Blood.
something about wading through blood is slowing people down. But
Yeah.
uh, yeah, that card is one that I remember using back in the day, but always having a hard time figuring out when to use it.
Right. Right.
But I think in this meta, it's definitely even better because there's a lot of people just moving on objectives or feature tokens. And yeah, I mean, if you're down to 1 or 2 hexes, you're probably not getting where you want to go.
Yeah, it's the kind of card that if people are playing conservatively, uh, comes into its own. Sometimes at those high levels of play, it's I'm drawing cards and then I'm making that one like well fueled activation at the end of the round, and this can kind of scuttle that. And
Mhm.
I do love the head games that happens in like game 2 and 3 when you know that the other player has that and they know that you know that they have that. So you're
Yeah,
like, all right, when do I pull the trigger? Do I set up and try and do this on round
definitely.
3? Or if people are dropping cards that are like in the next activation, you have +1 dice, determined effort or different things like that. You're waiting to see how many of those you can draw out, and then once you've got enough, that you can drop that. And that's actually where we're stalling for time with delves can actually come in handy. Like, well, I'll
Hmm.
delve. Let's see if you're going to put anything else on.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, you are? Okay, I'll delve again. Oh, another one? Okay. Guess what? The
And
water's rising.
oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, that or the single damage cards, which Korn also or Magor's also has the
They sure
demonic
do.
resilience, yeah,
Yeah.
or whatever that was. Anywho, yeah. So another good pick. Let's see, Max Bernstein, who of the uh, late question mark late
Yeah,
great
maybe.
Battle for Salvation Warhammer Underworlds podcast. He's been dipping his toe back in. Looks like I've seen him in some online league, working, getting back in the swing of things. And his new find was Wasteland, and this is the One Glory end phase card for no objectives in one person's territory. Is that
Hmm.
correct? Yeah.
It is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is. I've actually been playing with Wasteland quite a bit. I used it in my Crushes deck at Adepticon, and I've been using it in pretty much all my other aggro warbands since.
Mm,
And it's been pretty reliable. You just
mm.
don't flip anything in your side and move forward, and then usually people kind of forget about it. It's kind of like an automatic One Glory.
Yeah, I think that's nice for just don't have to change a lot about what I'm doing, and I'm just going to get a little bit extra glory along the way.
Yeah.
Next up, we got a bunch of contributions from our own Madison's own Skylar. Goes by OmniOps on the Discord if you're looking for him there. I'm going to start with one that he's attributing to one of our other players, Alex. So Skylar submitted it, but Alex kind of tried it out, and this is niche as it gets because it's specifically good for black powder
Yeah.
and not a lot of other spots. But he was talking about the setup and
Yeah.
putting that in there. Do you remind me what the setup is?
Yeah. I actually really like this. So the setup is an attack action upgrade. It's one range 1, 2 smash, 1 damage. It has combo, although I don't think that actually will matter here. The attack action characteristic cannot be modified. You skip the defense roll in the combat sequence for this attack action. The target is
Mm,
considered to have rolled 0 successes in their defense roll.
mm,
And as you say, for black powder, that's pretty spicy. You throw this on the monkey, and he is then just swinging away. I
yeah,
guess you could put it on the little Noblars too.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's just like, well, if I can just roll a success, I'm breaking one of your upgrades.
yeah. That's super cool. So yeah, that's a fun find. That's
Yeah.
one of the ones that I love. Like somebody plays that down, you're like, oh my god, did
My
not think of
upgrades
that.
are
That's
not
fun.
safe anymore.
Yeah. What else? Skylar threw out Pitiable Death, and this is a card. I can't tell you the number of times I've looked at this card and thought like maybe. And this is from Dire Chasm as well. It's a hybrid surge for 1. Score this immediately after a friendly fighter's attack action that takes an enemy fighter of action if the enemy fighter had 1 or more hunger counters or the enemy fighter was in a starting hex. So the starting hex is such a interesting thing because you're like, man, there's 14 of them on every board,
Yeah.
and makes it pretty. It makes it feel pretty possible. I will tell you what makes it feel a little rough currently is so many people care about standing on cover,
Yeah. They
and
just
those by
move
definition
off.
are not on starting hexes. So,
Yeah.
but as far as kill surges go, it feels like it can just randomly end up happening. If you're playing
Yeah.
against a Stormlord band, you're like, yeah, this is definitely happening. They're gonna have a hard time just getting out of the starting blocks fast enough to prevent this.
Right. That's probably where it shines the most.
Yeah,
Um,
I remember being sure that this was going to be good as cards were dropping. I was like, "There's going to be more stuff for putting hunger out on other people," and it never
Nope.
quite materialized. So,
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to set this up by giving your opponent hunger, wow. All right. Good luck. There's a few ways to do it, but that's a lot of work.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I think I always looked at this one thinking, oh, this will be good. And then for all the warbands I wanted to play kill surges in, there were ones that were less conditional. So
Yep.
like Hrothgorn, I think, is one of the warbands that I've run the most kill surges in because he's so good at just having options for killing enemy fighters. And he's got so many options that are just like, did I get a kill? I'll score a
Yeah.
glory.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay. I mean, there's no hoops to jump through there. It's like, did your leader get a kill? Yes, it's
Yeah.
Hrothgorn. Did a hunter kill a quarry? Well, yeah,
Yeah.
it's Hrothgorn.
Did a quarry die? Yes, it's Hardcorn. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this one is almost like is a well-designed card. It just kind of gets left off to the side because they designed a lot of kill surges that are just like, did you do a thing? Good job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess I skipped over some of Skylar's discussion on it, which was
Oh,
rude
sure.
of me. But one thing, and this is kind of a recurring theme for me. Some of my favorite card interactions are what he talks about here. If you know your opponent has it, you start looking at the board. They're going to start looking at the board differently.
Yep.
And in their second or third games, they're going to get in their head over it and like, oh man, can I afford to leave that person on a starting hex, or do I want to all of a sudden like, well, the best place for me to charge here is, into the spot, but that is a starting hex, and then I'm setting them up for the counterpunch with a surge.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good stuff.
Very good.
Another one is something right out of Essentials, Bag of Tricks. And this is going to come as no surprise from somebody who plays the Wild Hunt.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
for folks who don't know, do you want to run down Bag of Tricks quick?
yeah, good call. So this is an upgrade. Again, it's coming out of the Essentials pack, and it is action. So whoever it's on has to take this action. Search your power deck for a card, reveal it to each opponent, and add it to your hand. Then shuffle your power deck and give this fighter one charge token. So it is a way to spend an action, and we've talked about it. Like the cost on this is pretty high.
Yep.
An entire action and giving a charge token is a lot to deal with. But what you find is that there are certain decks that can find ways to leverage this. Mollog being the classic example. I definitely abused this card.
Sure did.
Yeah. And if you're running a deck that really cares about particular power cards, then all the more powerful. Or a deck that benefits from having charge tokens. So
yep.
The Wild Hunt obviously being one where having a charge token can inspire them or does inspire them. And this is a way. So Skylar mentions it's most powerful in round one. The strength it offers here makes it an auto include. In round one, the card can allow a fighter to stay back in a safe position, get them inspired for round two, and get you a card that could be instrumental in dealing with the current board state. So you can say, let me set this up. I am going to make sure that one of my key fighters gets inspired without having to risk them, because that's always the thing with the Wild Hunt, right? Like,
yep.
I can charge, but I'm gonna have to bomb a fighter forward into a vulnerable position, and often until they're inspired, they're kind of squishy. So
yeah, for sure. And I think people are probably aware of this, but this card's pretty darn good in the Exiled Dead. If you want to go that route, I don't know that they need it, but like if you wanted to, you can put it on Halberd dude
Regulus, Yeah.
and because he can just keep taking this action over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I was thinking about that. I'm trying to think what power card that they want so badly that they would do
yeah, I
such
don't
a
know that they
thing. But
do, but you can certainly abuse this if there is
yeah.
something that you need.
Yeah.
It's an option.
And in those occasions, sometimes you can be in this situation where like, well, I'm taking the first activation, but I'm not ready to commit to something yet, in the later rounds. So
Mhm.
do that. Skylar mentions that in later rounds, with the wild hunt, then Legane can actually carry this background. So can Squigs, which I've done,
Yeah.
uh, Bat Squig running around digging through the bag. Um, and it helps. And, especially if you want to make sure like, hey, I've got 8 cards left and I know 3 of them are pushes, uh, knowing that you can draw a push can sometimes be enough there. So,
Yeah,
uh, good choice and a good fit for this topic, in my
definitely.
opinion. So,
It's one of my favorite designed cards. I don't know that it actually plays out super well all the time, but I think the design is very spot on.
yeah, and I think like we talked about here, like there's certain war bands that really care. I mean, you may even have a war band like I know that Dread Pageant has a surge for everyone having a move or a charge token or something like that. So
Sure. Yeah.
this is a way that you can like, hey, I really want to get this particular card, but I also want to make progress towards scoring this surge. So there's a few other war bands that might take a look at it because of other reasons. But yeah.
Yep.
Um, Other content creators that contribute, Jacko. Jacko's got his own little blog, but he is also part of uh, Tabletop Sydney, which has finally released another video. They were working through some household moves and all that sort of thing, and
Nice.
unfortunately for those in the southern hemisphere, Australia had a long delay on receiving Nether Maze, so they finally got it,
Oh
so they can
no,
finally start releasing
that long
content for
delayed.
that. So,
Wow.
oh yeah, like Banana Town. So I'm sure they're excited to be back in the mix. I haven't had a chance to watch that next video, but I'm really glad to see that they're back in action. So, but that's a lot to talk about them. The card is Perfect Strike. So
Yeah.
this is a Surge Duel. Score this immediately after friendly fighter's attack action that took an enemy fighter out of action if the attack roll contained only successes and or critical successes, and the attack action dealt the precise amount of damage necessary to take the target out of action. Man, that's a lot of caveats. However,
Oh yeah.
2 glory surges are few and far between. I guess unless you're claw pack, then whatever.
Just got them for days.
Yeah. Um, this is another example of that niche card where, depending on what you have access to, this may actually be worthwhile. So for here, I know Matt from Set to Tempo. He was running it for a while with Rippas, because here's the things, like you get that bite. Often that bite
Yeah.
would finish it off, and often, if especially on the uninspired, the bite only even lands if you roll that.
Yeah, you
You're
gotta
only
get
rolling
one
one
success.
dice, you know.
So
Yeah, exactly. So, and you're often doing it with just like, oh, I randomly crit on a bite, and I killed a, at the time it'd be like, oh, I killed one of the Briar Queen's thorns. Like, okay,
yep.
I guess I'll get 3 glory for that.
Sweet.
So yeah,
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. Needing to only roll successes means more dice actually hurts your chances of scoring this.
hmm.
What are they called? Uh,
Give me a clue.
the
Give me a
the
hint.
bone boys, the new
Canaan's
bone
Reapers.
Canaan's Reapers. I've only used it with Canaan's Reapers. They're actually on
Hmm.
the card art as the ones scoring this. But the reason being is that you have access to some pretty easy double supports. So if you're
Yeah.
on Smash with double supports, you're probably rolling successes more often than not, and then you just
Hmm.
have to manage to get that one hit kill, or well, get the exact damage for the kill.
Yeah. And Natterite can make that a little complicated for them,
It
but yeah,
does, but you do have a number of different damage characteristics. You got a number
that's
of
true.
different ranges. Like
Yeah.
they've got some avenues to making this happen. Similar, I mean, you still have to luck into it a little bit, but
Yeah.
it can be
Well,
worthwhile.
and even Kanan has Hatred of Living for a reroll, which makes this more scoreable. Any
Yeah,
warband running rerolls. So Jacko's example, and he had just
yeah,
released an article worth checking out. But it was talking about Miari's, how he'd done with that at a tournament. And my experience with Miari's is that you are leaning into rerolls as much as possible. So
yep,
um, I think I ran the lighter version of this, the unequal contest, which is just did I have an attack roll that had only successes in it.
Yep.
Um, so definitely,
pretty solid.
Yeah. If you're feeling greedy, reach for it. Mikhail 1256 throws out a Mega's Offering.
Yeah.
What do we got for a Mega's Offering there?
Yeah, so Omega's Offering is a bit of a weird card. So this one is a persisting gambit where you choose one friendly fighter and put one. Well, I guess it's not even. Yes, it is persisting. Okay, so you choose one friendly fighter and put a glory point on their card, and then after the fighter is taken out of action by an enemy warband, so not specifically an attack, it can just be the warband, you gain the glory point on this card. So effectively, it's just saying, I'm going to make it so when you kill this fighter, the scoreboard doesn't change. Like you get one, but I get one. I think this works really well in a lot of warbands where you don't care about your fighter dying, or you're just trying to like cover for fighters dying. Like if you're worried that lots of fighters are going to die, this can be a really nice way to just make it that much harder for your opponent to gain ground on you.
Yeah. It especially is enjoyed by someone like Spike Claw, who also get a choose out of this, right? So choose a friendly fighter.
Yep. It's pretty
and
solid.
put stuff on them. I used it in one of the Grimwatch builds I was running, just to try it out, and it is a little tricky because I with that many fighters, I put it on someone, they're like, fine, I'll just kill somebody else. Yeah. So you really have to use this, and this is what Zach did really well when he was playing, and what some of those high level players can do is just give you lots of bad choices. So he'd wait to put this on somebody. They're like, man, I really want that person to die.
Yeah, I need that rat off that objective.
Yeah, I need them off that objective, or they've got a good weapon, or whatever the case may be. And so the real trick can be, hey, there's a fighter that is tooled up on defense, so they're not a very attractive target, and this more vulnerable one is an easier get, but darn, they've got a Mega's Offering, and now I can't really accelerate away. So
well, and I think where Zach also used this to really good effect was that he was also running all the other things that make it unappealing to kill fighters, and so then it would be like, well, if I kill that one, he's got Screaming Demise, and that one's got the Dying Curse, and this one's got Omega's Offering. Oh man, who's the least bad option here?
Yeah, Mikhail sums it up real well. It says, do you take them out and give me a glory to use on my stronger fighters, or do you avoid taking them out to deny us both the glory and let me use them to annoy you the entire match uncontested? The choice is yours, but I'm not mad about either.
Yep.
And then also this is if you're running one of these, this feels like a card for these more passive decks. So where it's really hard, where you're doing sort of I guess like the control decks where you're trying to deny a bunch of glory, and then it gets real hard. The other person is not scoring a bunch, and so then keeping pace with whatever they do score is tough. Plus, it can feed into the I think Promise of Destruction is the one glory end phase for persisting, because this persists for so long. You can drop it in round one, and then whenever Promise of Destruction comes up, it'll score because you've got assuming that this fighter's still around. So
yeah, maybe you were right. Maybe there are just enough persisting gambits hanging out there that you should be running like cancel a persisting gambit thing.
I don't know if bringing up enough cards in specifically the episode about hidden gems is a reason to take it, but
no.
But point taken. Chad Wright talks about Plunder the Graves. So Plunder the Graves is a gambit. It is specifically for death. Shuffle your power discard pile face down and draw the top card. Return that card to your hand. And Chad Wright says, it's so damn useful. Getting a ploy back to use twice has been huge, and I don't think a lot of people run this card. I've had Daylight Robbery go off twice in one case. Gross.
Yeah.
But cards like Hypnotic Buzz, Center of Attention, or Suffocating Mist getting double use is phenomenal. It's great when you have it in opening hand, of course, because you can just play it immediately after you use your first ploy to ensure you know what you'll get back. But it's still great later in the game and adds a bit of extra random drama to the game. So mechanically trying to think about this card, what this is really just like a nothing, right? Like this is a null card. Like this is a copy of a card yet to be determined. probably a Gambit because that's what most of your discard pile is going to be. It may end up being an illusion though, or
Yeah.
if some rude black powder player is breaking your upgrades, or if you're using upgrades that break themselves, which are often quite powerful. So
Yeah.
getting a second look at one of those. Um, it's a kind of card that's tough for me to include sometimes because I'm like, I don't know what it actually is. You know what I mean? Like you
Mhm.
don't look at it and say, this is another push. You're like, well, it might be another push,
Yeah.
or it might
I don't
be
know what
another.
this is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I mean, it's essentially just like you say, it's a copy of another card of your deck. And the way to think about it would be it's a copy of the average card in my deck. Because you don't know what you're going to get. But if you know that on average you're running like 7 pushes
Hmm.
and you know you're going to want more pushes,
Yeah.
then you have a pretty good chance of this coming back as a push.
That's a good point because if you're that heavy into one particular thing, then by the time you're looking for your eighth push, it may not be a very good push anymore, right? Like you're
Right.
you're kind of scraping the bottom of the push barrel, and so then this is like, hey, rather than take that crummy one, why don't you take another one of the ones you've already taken? So
Yeah. As not a card I've played with, I haven't played any death since Nether Maze, or
mm,
I don't even think I've played any death since Harrow Deep came out.
wow,
But I know a lot of their faction cards are pretty strong. Our Grand
sure,
Alliance, not faction, but um, yeah, I could see running this. That you'd sort of have to have a good reason to want a copy of another card in your deck, but like there's solid uses for that.
yeah. Let's see, we've got Baconborn. Baconborn runs the Determined Effort blog. And Baconborn throws out Dark Fortitude. If you want to give us a rundown of Dark Fortitude.
Yes. So Dark Fortitude is you cannot give this upgrade to a large fighter. So quick caveat to start things off. Then it has a reaction. So you use this after an activation step in which this fighter took one or more actions. If this fighter is in a cover hex, heal to this fighter and then break this card.
Mm.
Um,
Best part of this card is that it's got Garrick on it,
yeah,
which it's a classic thing where they do where they're like, let's show a fighter on here that is from a warband that probably doesn't actually take this. Like,
yeah.
who's
Um,
who's who's healing Reavers? Come on.
yeah, no, I don't think anybody's healing Reavers.
Yeah.
But this is pretty interesting. This is effectively like a healing potion that you will use. Uh, you only put it out when you know you're going to need it, I would
Yep.
guess. But because you can pretty much guarantee that it'll go off, it's got
Yep.
its uses. I think the limitation for you can't give this to a large fighter is pretty nice.
Yep.
I do like that they limit that because otherwise it'd be like, well, yeah, I'll heal 2 Motlog.
Yeah.
Um, I guess one thing to sort of comment on there is that all of those checks for when you can play upgrades only apply when you're playing them. So if you play
Hmm.
this and then put like plus wounds on a fighter to make them
Yeah.
large, they still
Yeah.
keep this.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I don't know where I would use this, but I can imagine that it could be useful.
Well, Baconborn says, even I was kind of down on this card initially, but it's a really nice card on 4-wound warbands, especially Wormspat, which, yeah,
Yeah,
because
that
those
makes
guys can
sense.
often sneak out of an attack action with just 1 or 2 health left,
Hmm.
and they reduced it. So it works as, like you said, a healing potion substitute. Now the primary healing cards got restricted. And then he also points out you can even give it to a fighter and then give him +1 wound upgrades after the fact. The obvious limitation is that it doesn't work if you get one shot, but there's a number of damage negating options in the game right now that can make it more reliable. So
Yeah.
for me, anyone with that damage limitation, I think likes this. Like I think Ripa, it can be handy
Yep.
because Ripa can often stack defense and then get and then using like narrow escape, then kind of survive an attack that maybe shouldn't have survived.
Hmm.
So forcing someone to get through that stacked defense more than once is tough. So yeah, I think this is a cool pick. Oh, also fun for denying Chum the Waters, says Bacon Porn. So that
Sure.
is a card that's all over the place right now. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Pretty solid.
yeah. Consul Mikhail gives for a less popular card, Hidden Sting from the Silent Menace.
Yeah.
So Hidden Sting, this is a card that I included in at least a Rivals Plus deck.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really good in Rivals Plus, and I think it's even just decently solid.
Yeah. Reaction: play this after a friendly fighter's successful range 1 attack action. If there were 1 or more crits in the attack roll, deal 1 damage to the target. So console says it's not quite Twist the Knife for those people that played in the first couple seasons, but it is a possible way to surprise spike damage. It can even be a counter to cards like Narrow Escape and Berserk Fortitude, as it deals damage after the activation.
Yeah,
I'll definitely try to put it into my deck, as it will make for some possible nasty surprises. It couples well with Grievous, and with the amount of rerolls you can get in Clawpack, I think he's talking about. It certainly has drawbacks, like not adding damage to the actual attack action, being unpredictable. Silent Helm can block it, and it's a reaction, so it can be blocked. But there are lots of cards that are just playing better than this one, but it's overlooked in his book, and any warband with several 3-dice range 1 attacks should consider this. I think that's super solid.
Yeah. I've certainly come around more on Grievous as an effect. I used to think like, well, how often am I going to roll a crit? But on 3+ dice, I feel like it actually comes up a lot.
I was definitely moaning about that. I was like, man, it feels like every time I'm playing against Grievous these days, they're like, like, well, if I trigger Grievous, I'll just one-shot you, and then goes off. Grievous. It's feeling really rough, Grievous. You're giving me a real hard time of it. But yeah, this is like kind of like double Grievous, and I really like the point about the damage mitigation, it happening after the fact. So somebody may say like, I don't need to Narrow Escape this, or they do to survive on the 1, and then you say, well, no, you die anyway.
Yeah,
exactly. Again, the head game sort of thing. Somebody then has to be like, okay, if they can reduce it by more than 1, like thinking of Berserk Fortitude in, they say like, well, I kind of want these walk counters for something else, but should I use enough to keep myself alive on 2? Or should I be worried about Hidden Sting popping out?
I mean, that literally, not with Hidden Sting, but that came up in our game, one that we were doing as a practice game for needing to be alive on more than 1 life, so that you didn't use
Channel the Wind.
Yeah. I was like, it's a channel something.
Channel something. Shmeshma.
So yeah, I think that I would rather see more of plus damage in the game come from things like gambits than always like plus damage upgrades. Just because it's less consistent. You only get it like 1 time. I don't know. One-shot meta gets a little tiresome.
Yeah, but it's specifically gambits that do it like this, where it has to be range 1 and you have to have a crit. Like that's more situational, so it's not just omnipresent. Like we went through that pit trap and twist the knife thing, where all of a sudden
always extra damage.
Trap, pit trap, twist the knife. All of a sudden you're like, oh, that really stacked up in a hurry, and that was essentially doing the same thing. It was felt more one-shotty, and this more situational is kind of fun.
Yep.
Our own Brian throws out Dark Inversion. He calls it wickedly disruptive. Actually, let's run through that card real quick.
Yeah, so this is a pretty new one. I had thought about it, haven't played with it much. I did have it played against me. I believe Brian played it against me. So you pick 2 feature tokens in empty hexes, and then you place each feature token in the hex the other feature token was in when you picked them. The play here usually is to pick one of the feature tokens in your opponent's territory that's an objective and swap it for one of your cover hexes in your territory.
Yeah. Or conversely, if you know that they are in invading hold or something like that, like they really want to hold.
Yep, you can move them out of your territory as well.
Yeah, you can deplete objectives from your own territory if somebody's running something like treasure hunters, or I've had cases where there was like only 1 objective in one of the territories, and you can bring it down. Like now there's not even any.
Yeah, there's now 0.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a really interesting card. This card would have been better probably back in the day of Hold Objective Land, where
Mm,
objectives were face up to start the game. It's probably
mm.
better that it exists not in that meta because, oh, I started with two, but now I can just pick one of yours and put it in my
Yeah,
territory. Yeah, that'd be
yeah.
rough. Um,
Or even like, I mean, if this existed in the days of lethal hexes, which were also
oh,
feature tokens,
jeez.
right?
Yeah,
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 weird stuff.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, he talks about it as being wickedly disruptive as a passive hold objective warband. You can guarantee 3 objectives or have 4 for oppressively reliable scoring. In an aggro, it could be an unexpected control play. Um,
Yep.
and for me, I've used it a couple times. Sometimes it's been really impactful. Sometimes not so much. But it is, I mean, it is a good fit for this episode because in the decks where it's real good, it's really good. And in other decks are like, I would never bring this in a million years. You know, like there's not enough upside for me to. I'll just take a push instead, or whatever. And
Yeah.
also, I was surprised how late in the game it remained useful. You know, I was like, well, all the tokens will get covered up, and then what's the big deal? But as fighters get knocked off of feature tokens and all that sort of thing, like opportunities kept arising to be able to use it. So
Yeah.
it was a card that was better. I included as like a haha, I'll try this, and then was pretty impressed with it once I had it in.
Yeah.
Um, Next one we'll attribute to both Brian and Skylar. This is Swarming Darkness, and I'm totally on board with them on this one. This is well, for one, Kishitaka is getting a little goopy on here. But
Yeah.
this is choose one friendly fighter and pick one feature token within 3 hexes of that fighter. If that feature token is an objective token, flip it. Otherwise, move that feature token 1 hex towards this fighter. Um, so this feels like Restless Prize often for me. Like this is that
Yes.
thing, and it doesn't have a caveat about having to be empty, which is what many of these cards have been requiring of late. So you can pull a feature token out from underneath somebody, provided it's on its cover side,
Yep.
um, and then have it for yourself. A lot of applications here, like remove a defensive boost. Um, you can actually use it to if you position in a particular way, you can pull it under somebody to score chum or lost in shadow. Like
Yep.
there's a lot of fun manipulation. I really got Restless Prize vibes. These guys mention if you are next to the target and the token is a gloom token, it's as good as confusion. Um,
Yep.
if they delve into an objective right before the end phase, you can flip it back to gloom to cripple hold objective scoring. And lots and man, being able to reach out 3 from one of your fighters that's often how far objectives are apart. So you can be standing on an objective and disrupt somebody else's feature token hold.
Very
So
true. It's a good card. You
yeah.
definitely need to be in a deck that cares about tokens to
Mm.
want to use this, but for every
Hmm.
deck that does, you probably want to play it.
I was talking to Wathlab uh, about decks for chosen axes of all things, and I noticed he didn't have this in here. I was like, that's crazy. Like you care about feature tokens. Well, what he was talking about is a strategy of flipping things over and leaving them on the objective side. And once you've done that, it's maybe less useful. And I encountered this. It was almost like he gave me a prophetic warning on this. So I was playing against Storm of Celestis, who don't just care about objectives, but they often care about objectives mid round. And I'm not sure if it was uh, like super good tech or just or what, but my opponent was flipping these objectives. Vint, shake my fist in your general direction. He was flipping these objectives pretty early, and all of a sudden I was like, well, this card's kind of dead. Because he flipped him so early, I couldn't deny with the last thing. You know, like this wasn't going to apply because I
Mhm.
couldn't flip it because he'd be able to delve it back if he had waited till the end. And I can't drag it out from underneath him because it's an objective.
Right.
So errors made there on my part, and I even held this card from round 1 to round 2, thinking that surely an opportunity will come up where this is useful. That was
Not
not
so
correct.
much.
So that was the example, and then again, you can develop that head game with
Yeah.
like forcing people to delve or flip objectives a little earlier than they might otherwise do. So yeah, real good pick for this. Next up, another local threw something at us is Cam. Penumbral Lock. That's a real deep cut.
Yeah.
Tell me about Penumbral Lock.
Yeah. So Penumbral Lock is a persisting gambit. Again, another persisting one. Objective tokens cannot be flipped. This effect persists until the end of the round or until one or more objective tokens are moved into an adjacent hex. Kind of a weird secondary caveat there. I don't
Yeah,
know how
really.
often that's going to come up. But yeah, so if you're a warband that wants the objective tokens and you don't want them to be getting flipped, talk about a way to just completely lock the board state in and be like, nope, we're not
Yeah.
delving. We're not. I mean, you can delve if they're on the cover side, but you can't get them back to being cover. So that is a pretty interesting one. I don't know how many warbands want this, but for the ones who do, is probably is like a home run. I just won the game kind of situation where you're like, I got my objectives, and you can't stop me from having my objectives.
Well, yeah, and this is the genre of power card that I really wanted to see right when we saw Harrow Deep drop. I'm like, there has to be cards that mess with the ability to delve.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's got to come up. Yeah, I have a hard time thinking of the warband that actually wants to run this right now. But this is the card I see that I say, like, there's somebody that has a mad science build that this is actually key for. Like this feels like the card that, if Michael from Steel City comes back in,
Yeah.
he'll be like, "Hey guys, what's up? Anyway, I've got an Eyes of the Nine build and it uses the Penumbral Lock." And you're like, "That sounds terrible." And he's like, "I'm gonna beat you by 14 glory."
Yeah. Something
So,
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah. If this just said outright, like, feature tokens can't be flipped, this would be insane. But you're right. I think this is definitely the kind of space where we need to be in, because it's like everybody's flipping stuff.
Yeah.
Here's a way that you can counter that without it being busted, because obviously
Yeah.
if it just had feature tokens, that would be like turn off all the scoring from flipping.
Yeah. I almost wish this was a waypoint, so that it would last from
Yeah.
across multiple rounds. Right now, it'll just last until the end of the round. But yeah, it's a cool one.
Yeah.
And with all the different cards that benefit from people being on cover, you can catch somebody out after they scored their ever downwards and say, all right, those are staying that way. But, Compact now of the Set the Tempo blog, unsurprisingly, has one that involves primacy. We know how much Compact loves the Mad Mob. Untapped resources. So untapped resources. I've included this card a couple times, and yeah, actually, because you had it when you were trying out your Starblood Stalkers primacy build, right?
I did.
Yeah.
I've shelved that build because I think flip tech's stronger, but certainly interesting to have the option to, if you do care about objectives, holding 2 is not super hard. And then B, the choices that you have here are pretty great. If you know you can get primacy back, you can just draw 3 cards. If you know you need primacy badly, having a way to get it by spending 1 glory is pretty solid.
Yeah. Play this only if your warband holds 2 or more objectives. Pick 1, spend 1 glory point and gain the primacy, or discard the primacy token and draw 3 power cards. Drawing 3 is nuts.
Yeah.
I don't know if
I played this with Mad Mob as well, and having access to 3 power cards was pretty good sometimes.
Yeah. Compact says it's not for every build, but anything that runs primacy, and not just Mad Mob. Put in a Dread Pageant, and they can score everything to prove and Surge of Aggression with it, or just draw 3 more power cards to try to get Silver Lining. It's gotten better since early non-aggro glory is more available now too.
Yeah,
it's a great point, because you can walk onto 2 delve for sudden revelation. Now you've got the glory. Now you can get primacy, and I think ways of getting primacy just with power cards is pretty nice. That makes that even more reliable. So
yeah, Um, I don't know. There have been times where I've pulled out a power card to gain primacy, and the look on your opponent's face when they just realize that, like, okay, I can't get it back now. There's literally no way to do it, so you're just
Oh
getting
yeah,
guaranteed glory out of this.
sure,
And if
sure.
so, it can be pretty rough.
Yeah, and they, especially for Mad Mob, as the obvious thing of being able to inspire extra fighters,
Yep.
or sometimes the discard is just as important. Discarding it so that you can gain it from
Mm-hmm.
something else.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah. Combat's got another one, Swarming Advance. You want to run that down for us real quick?
Yeah, so this is a pretty fun one. This is Gambit. You choose one friendly fighter in enemy territory and push up to 2 other friendly fighters 1 hex, so they are closer to that chosen fighter. Obviously, you want to have a few different fighters, and you need to be able to play into opponent's territory. But as soon as you do, this is just a push 2.
Mm-hmm.
Push 2s are always solid. I think even having the restriction that they have to be closer to that chosen fighter isn't that much of a restriction, because 1 hex towards the opponent territory is going to pretty well satisfy this condition.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen this used with Spite Claw Swarm to a pretty nasty effect. Bomb a rat onto an objective in enemy territory, push 2 other rats forward, and inspire the first one that you chose.
Yeah.
Seems pretty good.
Compact brings that up specifically. If you place the fighter in enemy territory well, really your 2 pushes are kind of wherever you want it. Like closer is going to be, you're going to have a lot of flexibility with that if you do well with your placing.
Yeah.
It does say most people view it for aggro, which it is good for. But just like you were talking about, Phil, he says it can just push 2 fighters at the back onto feature tokens. So if you set your tokens intelligently when you're deploying, you can do this sort of thing. So he says it's good for Skaven. You can move Kirk across, inspire him to 2 shields, and push 2 other fighters onto tokens. And now all of a sudden, like 1 activation and a power card, and you're standing on 3.
Yeah.
Oof. And step between shadows, there are other ways to get across that isn't an early charge. So you can
Sure
2 power card something and get across. So
yeah.
Yeah, really cool one. I also had it in Rivals Plus and enjoyed it for. I specifically, it was for Reavers, so I could bomb in and then get some extra hits going. So
Yeah. Don't sleep on double pushes, even if they're restricted. Double
Sure.
push is very powerful. Every warband
Yeah.
that has one plays it all the time, and
Mhm.
so having a generic one is more powerful than you might think.
Yeah. Here's one that I find some people love and some people hate, and Josh's My Size Fits All throws out
Yeah.
Hall of Hidden Eyes. Halls of Hidden Eyes. This is a waypoint, and it means that rolls of single supports and double supports are successes in attack rolls if the target is in a cover hex. This effect persists until another waypoint is played. Um, and he says there was a lot of talk about it in anticipation of Shadeborn. Hasn't really seen people playing it. Adding 2 success options to attacks for making cover hexes a no-go zone is big, especially for aggro. I definitely put this in a Farstrider deck, which had other issues, but man, it was like, wow! All of a sudden, like the only things that are not successes on this are smashed. Like let's get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it works best with ranged attackers. I think you'd also want to be in. I think the reason you probably don't see it a lot is everyone kind of cares about cover hexes right now, and you don't want this to suddenly turn against you. If your fighters are hanging out in cover and all of your opponent's attacks are getting single and double supports, could be kind of rough. Something I've thought about for playing with Thundrix Profiteers. I haven't built them yet. I've been thinking about it though, and they probably are kind of okay with this because I have a lot of range 3, and suddenly having all those range 3 attacks be super accurate would be pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. And they have at least one of their surges, and depending if you're feeling saucy, and take Perfect Strike as well, but they have Steady Aim, which is if all rolls in your attack action were successes. So this can feed into that sort of thing. I like it. And then at the time, there was also some talk of like, using waypoints to break other waypoints. I don't know that we've seen a whole lot of that,
I
but
haven't seen it at all. I actually haven't
yeah.
seen anyone play a waypoint yet, but I know in theory.
Yeah. Shuby, the great Shuby,
Oh
threw
man,
out for it. He didn't give explanations on these, so we're gonna
we'll
give our own
guess.
justification. Shadow Spear first up.
Uh,
Uh, Tell me about Shadow Spear.
I've been victim to this particular upgrade. So this is a weapon upgrade. Is reach 2, 3 smash for 2 damage with cleave. So
Mm.
crazy good.
Hmm.
Caveat that makes it less good. This fighter cannot make this attack action unless they are in a cover hex.
Hmm.
However, there's a lot of cover hexes right now.
Yep.
Um, so in particular, this was Brian played this against me when he was using his claw pack. I'm not 100% sure claw pack needed it, but it certainly worked.
Yeah.
I think any warband that would like to have reach 2 could pretty well benefit from this, and there it's not an illusion, so it doesn't break. So you just, as long as you can position your attacks, this is a pretty solid upgrade.
Yeah. I liked it in. I had it in my Grimwatch. I like it for warbands that care about standing on objectives because you can
Mm.
have it be a cover, do some damage from there while
Ooh,
standing on that. Range 2 is nice because you gives you more options for
yeah,
attacking while still being on something. And then when you're ready, you delve it to what you need it to be.
yeah.
Uh,
I bet Sepulchral Guard could use this pretty well too.
sure.
Petitioners need something to make them useful, and this would certainly do that.
That could do the trick. Shuby's got another weapon here, Phantom Fathomer. This is definitely one that I've not
Weird
considered until he
choice.
made
Yeah.
me look at it harder. So this is an attack action upgrade, range 1, 1 smash, 2 damage, grievous. But the thing that unlocks this is the attack action has +1 dice for each upgrade the target has. That means once they've got 1 upgrade, you're at a decent attack action. 2
Yep.
smash, 2 damage, grievous. Probably wouldn't take that. As soon as they got 2 upgrades, it's a really good attack action.
Yep.
3 smash, 2 damage, grievous is hot, and then it can obviously, like, the sky's the limit. And the other thing is often on those, like, I think of the number of times we're going to mention Brian again here, but the number of times that he's stacked a ton of upgrades on, like, Glissette, right?
Yeah.
Like
Sure.
okay, well, sure, you've got, Silent Helm and all these other things. Silent Helm is going to stop one of my crits, but I'm throwing 5 dice at you or whatever. So, like,
Right.
if I get 2 crits, I'm getting through and I'm doing the trick. So I think that's pretty interesting, pretty hot take there.
Mm-hmm.
Enough that I might have to try it out.
Sure.
Grievous Riposte. I can't talk about this one because of PTSD, so I'm gonna leave it to you.
Okay, sure. So this this is a ploy. This is a reaction. Um, so you play this after a failed range 1 attack action that targets a friendly fighter. Now that is an important point because it's not
Mhm.
if an opponent attacks you from 1 hex away. It has to be a range 1 attack action. Uh, if there was 1 or more crits in your defense roll, you deal 2 damage to the attacker.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, if you've got some high number of defense dice and you know you're at least at some point going to be getting attacked with a range 1 attack, which I feel like happens most games,
Mm.
this could be pretty backbreaking. You
Yeah.
like go in for your attack, you're like, okay, even if this doesn't succeed, I'm probably moving my game state forward. And it's like, oh, by the way, your fighter's dead. And it's like, oh, no.
Yeah.
Rerolls obviously help here. You can fish for crits. Yeah, it's definitely like it's not gonna work for you all the time, but when it does,
Yeah.
very disruptive.
I can tell you somebody who definitely grievous riposted me. I'm trying to remember what warband I had, but it killed a pretty decent fighter. Oh, I was running Soul Raid, and I lost. Shoot, I got Fuirin killed by this. She came charging in, and the fighter that killed her was none other than Stalag Squig. So
Yeah,
grievous riposted me. Trying to picture exactly how that worked, but Jazz had that pick in there, which I guess the idea was that you try and farm some glory off of like Stalag Squig or Bat Squig, and if you can accidentally kill yourself, which I did.
Yeah.
So yeah, rough one. And then Chewy's got, we're going to call this the Shrewd Wits package. So listed Barging Forward, Not Lost, Spinning Menace, and Shrewd Wits. The key piece here is the Shrewd Wits. This is an upgrade. Turns a fighter into an assassin.
Yeah.
And then a reaction after a scatter ability is resolved, and it can be friendly or enemy. Push this fighter up to 2 hexes. The other cards he's listed, Not Lost, Barging Forward, and Spinning Menace, are all cards that trigger the scatter mechanic.
Yep.
It's worth noting, and I had a conversation about this because I thought this card would be amazing in Grimwatch, but the Grimwatch summoning ability is not. It doesn't actually. While it uses the scatter token, it is not a scatter ability. It doesn't have like a bullet scatter. That would have been totally nuts. But anyway, this man, it has the card shows Sour Tongue being dismayed that is that Crouched is leaping at him.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Bold move, Crouch, jumping towards the fanatic.
Yeah, he's gonna get him.
The real hidden strength on Shrewd Wits is actually having it on Snirk, because he can spin, do as much damage as you want, and then use this after his own spin to reposition into another threatening spot.
Yeah,
I think this. Yeah,
pretty saucy there.
Yeah, turbo modes. I mean, even there's options where you don't put it on him and you're just using it to position somebody else.
Yeah,
but that is a big one.
Yeah.
Oof.
Having that guaranteed scatter that you can just kind of rely on is pretty nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, when I first saw this, I thought there's probably something to do here, but I never really investigated.
Yeah,
but I like it.
Yeah. So quite the package. There's a couple of Gitz players in the Vassal Brawl, so I'm looking forward to seeing if they. I have to imagine that Shrewd Wits is in both those decks. We'll see how much of the full scatter package is showing up there as well.
Yeah.
But better have a way to drop Snirk if this is showing up. So
yeah. And
our last submission is Silver Sabbath, who is a constant presence on the Discords. Fair to say that you'll see Silver Sabbath posting regularly if you stick your head in. Silver Sabbath put out 3. So there's Blunt Force Master. Phil, you know this one. You were including this.
I do. I ran this. Didn't help me at all, although in theory it should have. So this is an upgrade. It gives all your fighters range 1 and 2 attack actions stagger, as long as they're targeting an adjacent fighter. And so that's decent. Stagger is useful. And then it also has a reaction that after this fighter's successful range 1 or 2 attack action, you can push the target 1 hex away from this fighter. I think the second piece is probably more useful in my mind. So if you have a fighter that you can't get a kill on, but you need to get them off an objective, no matter what, if you can land your hit, you can push them, because this is a push, not a drive back, so guard doesn't stop it.
Yeah.
Never came up for me, unfortunately, but in theory, it's useful, especially with people caring so much about positioning these days.
Yep. And he says, not very good on every warband, but for those with reaction attacks and or scything or exile dead, it gives decent accuracy boost with solid reaction to finish off fighters. Yeah, totally.
Giving more stagger to the exiled dead certainly makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, reaction attacks. I think there's an argument for someone like Rippos who likes to hit there and then have a reroll to fish for that crit on the bite. If you can stagger him on the first one,
makes sense.
So lots of possibilities there. We got another one from Silver Sabbath, Barging Forward. Thinks it's one of the strongest pushes that exists now. A little bit random, but being controlled thanks to the wording. So read that off for me, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, this is one of the longest cards I think that they've printed in a while. So it's a ploy where you choose a friendly fighter, scatter 5 from the chosen fighter's hex, and push the chosen fighter along the chain to the end hex. If the chain is interrupted, or if the fighter would be pushed into a hex that is blocked or occupied, do not push them any further. After the push, if the chosen fighter is a brawler, deal 1 damage to one enemy fighter adjacent to the chosen fighter. Best case scenario, this is a push 5. That's pretty solid. I think given how scatter usually works out, this is probably not actually a push 5. You're probably only getting about 3 hexes in the direction you want to be going. That's still pretty solid. And then if you're playing brawlers, I think this is the icing there. It makes this really worthwhile. You push yourself into a position to make an attack. Doesn't really matter where you end up. And then you can just ping somebody as well.
Yeah, and every time I played against this, it feels fairly reliable as a push 2, because the trick is you just push in the direction you want and then make the chain interrupt.
Yep.
Because you can choose how to set that chain up, so you force it to be interrupted by the edge of the board or by a block tax or something like that, and then you're there.
Yeah,
you landed. So it is deceptively an accurate push.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think the fact that it's scatter 5 gives you lots of choices in where to go in the chain, and that makes it a pretty solid push. If this just said push 2, I think people would always play it. So I don't actually know that it's a whole lot different than that.
Yeah, and if you got a lot of brawlers, aka condemners, then just this is a ping on top of everything else, which is pretty nuts. Last one from Silver Sabbath, last submission of all is Abyssal Summoner, and I'm going to admit to having kind of overlooked this one. This is during attack actions made by this fighter. If this fighter is in a cover hex, this fighter is considered to have 1 additional supporting fighter. I think about how often I took what was it, helpful whispers.
Yep.
Way back in the Shadespire days, which just made single supports. It didn't give you a supporting fighter. It meant that single supports were successful as long as you didn't have any friends next to you.
Yeah.
That's basically this. Only you have to be in cover. That's pretty boss.
Yep. Solid.
So and especially for Silver Sabbath points this out. Range 2 or 3 fighters, which have more flexibility in positioning, can get a lot of mileage out of this.
For what it's worth, I was looking at pretty much all of the. So there's actually a couple of different upgrades that work similar to this, that I pulled for my Hrothgorn build. So the other 2 that are similar are Master of Shadows, which is you get a reroll of one of your fighter's attack rolls while they're in a cover hex. So you can stack these, and that's really nice. And then the other one is Shadow Seeker, where rolls of single support are successes in the fighter's attack rolls if there are no enemy fighters within 2 hexes of the fighter, and then rolls of single supports are also successes in this fighter's defense rolls if this fighter is a hunter and the attacker is not adjacent to you. Kind of all 3 of those together gives you a nice little accuracy package and a little bit of a defensive boost.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty solid stuff. I haven't seen too many people run them. I really liked it when I put it with my Hrothgorn. I don't know how much your Grimwatch liked it.
Not very much.
I was getting rerolls on his crossbow, and I was like, well, 2 Fury with the reroll is pretty accurate. Let's see how I can do it. And just pick off a whole bunch of little guys.
Usually when you're lying, like, well, it's fine, Hrothgorn's going to miss some of these. Like, or maybe he won't.
Yeah. So I like this one. I actually didn't include this one, but I think I might go back and find a spot for it. I like this.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning the other factor for wanting to find a place for this one is if you have stuff that scores off of having supports. So I don't know, that you might even Cunning Crew might be interested in this. Put it on, make an attack. Doesn't matter what else is going on, as long as you attack from cover, you're going to inspire. And they have a lot of other things that trigger off of having done things supported, objectives or kills and all that sort of thing. So if you are a deck that can really leverage supports in some way, or benefits from counting as having supporting fighters, then there's even I've seen a few Rippabills where people try to lane, and they actually have a fair amount of support tech in that
Mm-hmm.
deck. So that's also a possibility.
Yeah. And I think it's worth mentioning. So we've talked a lot with
Period.
a lot. Well, we've talked a lot, but a lot of these cards that sort of are uh, requiring that either you or your opponent be in a cover hex. And there was a while where I was building decks and thinking about cards and thinking, man, like having this limitation on my positioning always feels like it's going to end up being so rough.
Mm.
It's just not really played out that way, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost always trying to be in cover hexes if I can, and
Yeah.
so are my opponents. So like anything that's saying you get this bonus if you're in cover, or you get this bonus if your opponent is in cover, you might as well just read that as like you just have this bonus because that's more often than not the case.
Yeah.
Um, so don't think that for some reason this just won't ever trigger, because I think it usually will.
Yeah.
Um,
I had a good chat with Diablerist. I was spectating one of his games and was kind of looking at his deck after the fact, and I was like, "Hey, what's going on here? Like, it looks like you're missing some obvious things." And I know you're a really talented player and deck builder, so like, tell me more about how you ended up here. And he was playing around with the like, so many people are counting on the enemy being in cover,
yeah,
be it from objectives or chum the water or whatever the case may be, that he's saying, I'm going to see if I can, avoid those ping damage things. I'm going to avoid that by just not. I'm going to be that rare deck that doesn't care about him, and see if I can brick out some of your deck just that way. And I was like, oh,
yeah,
I like that counter meta choice, and I think that might be something we explore a little more later at some point.
yeah. It's certainly something to consider. I have not tried it yet, but I bet you that there's a way to make that work.
Yeah. But that wraps it up. One more time, thank you very much to all the people who contributed to this. That was really awesome to get that kind of engagement from the community, and shout out to all of you. And I hope you enjoyed hearing about everybody's many and varied thoughts on this particular matter.
Yeah.
Phil, you got anything else before we start outroing?
No, I think that's it. That was some fun discussion, and some stuff to consider.
Yeah. If you do want to get in touch with us, we're on Twitter at WTHcast. You can email us whatthehexcast@gmail.com. You can find us on the Discord. You can find us on our own Discord, which is growing all the time. You can find us in person if you're in the Madison area. We're doing every Thursday night at Noble Night Games. We'd love to see you. I think we had the last time I was out there were 14 people playing, which was kind of amazing for just a league night. So pretty great. If you want to check out other content, there's the mortalrealms.com. Go to the website there and root around. I was just listening to some of the Story Phase episodes. They did some coverage of Season of War of Thondia and the Daughters of Cain battle tome, just the lore behind those. And it was a good listen for me. I enjoyed not being on it and listening to it instead.
Yeah.
It meant that I could shake my fist and shout at the speaker when the really bad jokes came out instead of having try to be a little bit professional. So coming up, we have a couple of possibilities. So we're hoping to scoop maybe the winner or a interesting deck from the Vassal Brawl, which is going on right now. Talk to some of the folks there. That's our first candidate. We were kicking around the idea of going through the lore of every warband. Like, why are they even in Underworlds?
Yeah.
We'll see if that plays out, and maybe as you get back in it, we'll just let you get some games in and see where you go.
Actually, roll some dice.
Yeah. I've got your quick flavor text quiz. You ready for this?
As ready as I'll ever be.
Yeah, as in not at all. So your hint will be that it is a card that we talked about today.
Oh, right. Okay.
All right. So the power of Beastgrave sometimes manifests in strange and horrific mutations.
Oh man. I bet this is an upgrade, but maybe not. Man, I have no idea.
Okay, you steered yourself wrong with the upgrade. That's a hidden sting. So a little
Ah,
beast grave action.
that makes
Um,
sense. Yeah. Okay.
if folks don't care for that segment, let me know and I'll cut it. Skylar had an interesting alternate way of doing it, which is find one of these that has a quote, read the quote, and then have you try to
Who
determine
said it?
who said it, which is fun because like they're in a particular voice or
Yeah.
whatever, so
Yeah.
you can kind of get a sense. Your recommended listening for this is "Lay Your Cards Out" by Policia. Uh, that's a band I've been checking out a bunch lately. Really enjoying that. It's a cool track, so go check it out. But thanks for everybody for listening. We'll be back at you. Apologies, this episode is going to be coming to you a little bit later than we like to do, but COVID got both our families, so I think that'll be. But we'll be back on track for Saturday morning releases moving forward from here,
Yeah.
and we'll catch you on the next one. For What the Heck, I've been Davey.
And this is Bill.
I'm gonna cut that out, which is great for me. Really appreciate it. The blah, 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 not going to edit too much. And I think that one's in Silent Menace, right? That's where all the strikes came from. Maybe not. So
No, this one was from, I think this one was earlier, but maybe I'm wrong. I'd have to double check. Let's see. Was it?
If only I could have done any
Nope,
kind of
this
research.
one was in with Canaan's Reapers.
You are correct. Okay. More editing for me. Yeah. Then I was playing against the Condemners.
Mm-hmm.
Not Condemners. The what are the Castigator Warband? Man, fumbling.
Yeah. I don't play against them enough to remember their actual name.
Yeah, show me some warbands. Oh, my editing. What am I doing? Oh, now they're sorted by order. Is this them? Storm of Celestis.
Yes.